My chosen one, something has gone terribly wrong, and this is not a message that arrives softly. This is not a whisper in your spirit. This is a scream, a divine, piercing scream that has echoed through the heavens and broken through into this very moment. Archangel Michael is not calm right now. He is not standing silently with his sword lowered. No, he is shouting, urgently, desperately, because what is happening around you at this very second cannot wait another minute. You were not meant to stumble upon this message by accident. You were pulled here, guided, interrupted, because April 24th carries a weight that cannot be ignored. There are moments in time when the veil between the physical and the spiritual becomes dangerously thin, and this is one of those moments. Something has shifted. Something has crossed over. And now something is watching. Pause for just a second and feel the atmosphere around you. Have you sensed it? That strange stillness. That feeling like you're not alone, even when no one is there. That subtle tension in the air, like something unseen is observing your every move. This is not your imagination. This is confirmation. There is a presence near your home. Not metaphorically. Not symbolically. Literally. Watching. Waiting. Studying. And Archangel Michael is raising his voice because you are in a moment of decision, whether you realize it or not. To ignore this message is to turn your back on a divine interruption that was sent specifically to protect you. This is not fear for the sake of fear. This is awareness. This is a warning born from protection, not punishment. Because there are forces, seen and unseen, that move when you are unaware. They thrive in silence. They grow stronger when they are ignored. And right now, something has taken interest in you, in your space, in your energy. Why you? That question may already be forming in your mind. And the truth is, not everyone would have received this message. Not everyone would have been chosen to hear a warning at this level. There is something about you, something valuable, something spiritually significant, that has drawn attention, both from above and from below. Archangel Michael does not scream without reason. His voice carries authority, protection, and urgency. When he raises it, it means the situation has escalated beyond quiet guidance. It means action must be taken immediately. April 24th is not just another day. It is a line drawn in the unseen world. A moment where paths begin to split. And depending on what you do after hearing this message, everything can change. You may feel a chill right now. You may feel your heart beating faster. That is not coincidence. That is your spirit recognizing truth before your mind fully understands it. Because deep inside, you already know something is off. Something is different. And this message is confirming what you have been trying to ignore. Do not brush this aside. Do not scroll away. Because what happens next depends on what you choose to do with what you have just heard. There is something you must understand right now, and it may feel unsettling as it settles into your spirit. But you cannot afford to turn away from it. Not everything that watches you has a visible form. Not every presence announces itself with footsteps or sound. Some things exist in silence, in stillness, in spaces where your physical senses cannot fully reach. And yet, their awareness of you is very real. What is near your home at this moment does not rely on doors or windows to observe. It does not need permission in the way you would expect. It simply watches patiently, quietly, and with intent. Think carefully about the past few days, or even weeks. There have been signs. Small, almost dismissible moments that seem too insignificant to question. A faint noise at night that you brushed off. A sudden urge to check behind you when no one was there. The feeling of unease in a specific room without any clear reason. These are not random occurrences. These are fragments of awareness trying to rise to the surface of your understanding. You may have felt it strongest when everything around you was silent. Late at night, when the world slows down and distractions fade, that is when the unseen becomes more noticeable. Have you ever felt like something was just off? Like the air itself carried a strange weight? That is not your imagination playing tricks on you. That is your spirit detecting something your eyes cannot confirm. There are watchers that exist beyond what you have been taught to recognize. Some are tied to human intention, driven by motives that are not always pure. Others are not human at all. They are drawn to energy, to emotional states, to spiritual openings that people unknowingly create. And when both types of awareness begin to focus on one place, your place, it creates a tension that cannot remain hidden forever. This is why the warning has come with such urgency. Because when observation begins, it is rarely the final step. Watching is the preparation phase. It is the gathering of information, the study of habits, the waiting for the perfect moment when defenses are low and awareness is absent. And if you remain unaware, you unknowingly make that process easier. Your home is meant to be a place of safety, a place where your spirit can rest without disturbance. But every home holds more than just physical objects. It holds energy layers of it. Conversations, emotions, memories, even silent thoughts leave traces behind. Over time, if that energy is not protected or renewed, it can create subtle openings. These openings are not visible cracks or broken locks. They are spiritual vulnerabilities. And once something detects those vulnerabilities, it begins to linger. The most dangerous part of all of this is not the presence itself. It is the delay in recognizing it. Because the longer something remains unnoticed, the more comfortable it becomes, the more established its presence grows, and the harder it becomes to remove without effort, without intention, without divine intervention. But here is where everything begins to shift. The moment you become aware, truly aware, something changes. Awareness is not passive, it is active. It disrupts patterns. It exposes what was hidden. It creates resistance against what thrived in secrecy. And that is exactly why this message reached you now, before anything could go further. You were not chosen randomly. There is a reason your attention was pulled here, a reason your spirit did not ignore this message completely. Something within you recognized the urgency even before your mind began to process it. That is not coincidence. That is alignment. Archangel Michael stands not as a distant figure, but as an active protector in moments exactly like this. His warning is not meant to paralyze you with fear, but to awaken you with clarity. Because fear without action leads to vulnerability, but awareness with action leads to protection. Right now, you are standing at a point where understanding begins. You are no longer completely unaware. You are no longer completely exposed. But you are also not yet fully protected. This is the space in between, the moment where your response determines what happens next. So listen carefully to what your spirit is telling you. Pay attention to what you have been feeling, what you have been sensing. Because this is not the end of the warning. This is only the beginning of what you are about to uncover. Listen closely, because what you are about to hear is something that was never meant to reach you this clearly, this directly, and this urgently. Messages like this are usually softened, filtered, or delayed, but not this time. This time, the warning has been released without restraint. And the reason is simple. Time is no longer on your side. You are not hearing this by coincidence. You are hearing this because something has already begun. The watching you sense the presence you tried to ignore. It has crossed from observation into intention. And that is the moment Archangel Michael stepped forward, not in silence, but with a voice that cuts through every layer of distraction you have been living in. There have been others before you who received warnings just like this. They felt the signs. They noticed the unease. They were given a chance to act, but they hesitated. They dismissed it. They told themselves it was nothing. And by the time they realized it was real, it was already too late to stop what had been set into motion. This is why this message feels different, heavier, more intense, because it carries not just a warning, but a deadline. April 24th is not just a date. It is a spiritual threshold, a dividing line between awareness and consequence, between protection and exposure. Right now, you are standing at that line. There is something you must do, and you must do it without delay. You cannot wait for more signs. You cannot wait for confirmation from the physical world. The confirmation has already been given to your spirit, and your spirit does not lie. You need to reclaim the authority over your space. Right where you are, whether you are sitting, standing, or listening in silence, you must speak. Not loudly for others, but clearly within your environment. Declare that no presence without divine permission is allowed to remain. Call upon Archangel Michael, not as a distant figure, but as a protector who stands ready at your command of faith. You do not need perfect words. You need intention. You need belief. Because what has been watching you depends on your silence. It depends on your hesitation. It depends on you doing nothing. And the moment you break that silence, everything begins to shift. You may feel resistance when you do this. You may feel a sudden wave of doubt, distraction, or even fear trying to stop you. That is not random. That is the reaction of something that does not want to lose its place near you. But you must push through it. You must act anyway. This is your moment to interrupt what has already started forming. Archangel Michael's presence is not passive right now. He is waiting for your response, waiting for your signal that you are ready to stand, ready to protect, ready to no longer ignore what has been revealed. Because divine protection does not force itself into your space, it responds to your invitation. And understand this clearly: ignoring this message does not make the situation disappear. It strengthens it. It gives more time, more access, more opportunity for whatever it is watching to move closer, deeper, and stronger. But you still have time. Not much, but enough. Enough to act. Enough to shift the outcome. Enough to close what has been opened. This is why you were chosen to hear this now. Not later. Not after something happens, but before. So do not delay. Do not overthink. Do not wait for comfort. Act. Speak. Claim your space back. Because what you do in this moment determines what will be allowed to remain. Type "I am protected" in the comments if you receive this message and are ready to act. Blessing code 6391 has just been activated around your life. And as this message reaches into your spirit, understand this is more than just a warning. It is a mission. When you choose to stand in this moment, you are not only protecting yourself, but helping light break through for others who are still unaware. As it is written, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. This is not just a verse. It is a living truth being spoken over you right now. And if your spirit is stirring, if something inside you is saying, "I must do more," then listen to that voice. Because this message is reaching souls across the world, pulling them out of darkness into awareness. Through your support, through your seed, this message continues to travel where it is needed most. There are links in the description and a QR code on your screen where you can release your offering through PayPal. This is not just giving. This is sowing into protection, into truth, into divine urgency. I declare over you now, as you give, doors will open, protection will increase, and what was meant for harm will be turned away from your path. Do not hesitate when your spirit calls you to act. Step forward, sow your seed, and become part of what heaven is releasing in this very moment. There is a layer to your home that you cannot see, cannot touch, and yet it influences everything that happens within it. Most people live their entire lives unaware of this layer, believing that walls, doors, and locks are enough to define safety. But what surrounds you goes far beyond the physical. There is an unseen boundary, a spiritual perimeter, and right now that boundary has been disturbed. This is what Archangel Michael hath been trying to make you understand. The issue is not just what is outside your home, it is what has found a way to come close enough to sense what is inside. Because before anything enters physically, it approaches spiritually. It studies the energy of a place long before it attempts to cross into it. Every home carries an atmosphere, not just air but energy shaped by emotions, words, habits, and even silent thoughts. Joy strengthens it. Peace stabilizes it. But fear, stress, anger, and prolonged negativity can weaken it over time. These weakened areas become openings, not visible cracks, but subtle invitations that something unseen can detect. You may not remember when it started. It could have been gradual. A season of stress, a period of emotional exhaustion, moments where your spirit felt drained or overwhelmed. These moments do not go unnoticed in the unseen realm. They create shifts, small at first, but enough to signal vulnerability. And once a vulnerability is detected, something begins to test it. Have you noticed how certain areas of your home feel different from others? A corner that feels heavier, a room where you feel less at ease, a space where your thoughts become more unsettled. That is not random. That is where the energy has been disturbed the most. That is where attention has likely been focused. This is what is known as a spiritual breach. It does not mean something has fully entered, but it means the boundary hath been touched, pressed, and possibly weakened. And if left unaddressed, that breach can widen. What starts as observation can turn into influence. What begins as presence can become interference. This is why ignoring the signs is so dangerous. Because breaches do not repair themselves. They require awareness. They require action. And most importantly, they require authority. Archangel Michael does not simply warn. He equips. His sword is not just a symbol of power, but of protection, of division between what is allowed and what is not. When you call upon him, you are not asking for something distant. You are activating a force that stands between you and anything that does not belong in your space. But here is the truth many do not realize. Protection must be invited, and authority must be exercised. You cannot remain passive and expect your environment to correct itself. You must take your place within it. Walk through your home with awareness. Feel each space. Acknowledge where the atmosphere feels different. Do not ignore it. Do not dismiss it. Because your awareness alone begins to challenge what has been hiding there. Speak into those spaces, not with fear, but with certainty. Declare that your home is covered, protected, and sealed. Call upon Archangel Michael to stand at every entrance, every window, every unseen boundary. Visualize his presence not as distant, but as immediate, guarding, watching, and restoring what has been weakened. You may feel something shift as you do this. A lightness, a release, or even resistance trying to linger. But continue, because restoration is a process that begins the moment you refuse to remain unaware. What is important now is that you do not return to silence. Silence is what allowed the breach to form. Awareness is what begins to close it. And understand this: your home is not just a structure. It is a reflection of your spiritual state. When you strengthen your awareness, your environment responds. When you stand in authority, your space aligns with it. Archangel Michael is not stepping away. He is standing closer now than before. But this moment requires your participation, your voice, your decision to no longer allow anything unseen to remain unchallenged. Because what has been watching is now being confronted. And what you do from this point forward will determine whether that breach is sealed or whether it is allowed to grow. Now listen carefully, because what is being revealed at this stage is no longer surface-level awareness. It is the deeper truth behind why this presence has remained, why it has been watching, and what it is truly trying to do. This is not random. This is not accidental. And most importantly, this is not without intention. What is near your home right now is not simply observing out of curiosity. It is studying with purpose. It has been patient, calculated, and precise. It has taken time to understand your environment, your emotional patterns, your routines, and even your moments of weakness. This kind of attention does not happen without a reason. It happens when something about you begins to stand out in the unseen realm. There is something within you that carries weight, something that is growing, shifting, or awakening. It may be your purpose, your spiritual sensitivity, or even the changes you have been going through recently. Whether you realize it or not, your energy has changed. And when energy shifts, it sends signals. Those signals do not just rise upward, they also move outward. And what responds to those signals is not always aligned with your peace. This is where the truth becomes difficult, but necessary. What is watching you is not passive. It has intention, and that intention is tied to influence. Not immediate harm, not sudden action, but slow, quiet influence that builds over time. Have you noticed how certain emotions have intensified without clear reason? How your peace has been interrupted by sudden waves of unease? How your thoughts sometimes feel heavier, more scattered, or harder to control than before? These are not always internal struggles. Sometimes they are responses to something external pressing against your state of being. This is how influence begins. It starts subtly, almost invisibly. A small thought that feels slightly negative. A moment of doubt that replaces your usual clarity. A sudden drop in energy when you should feel stable. These moments seem minor on their own, but when they repeat, they begin to form patterns. And patterns create openings. Openings are what allowed influence to grow. Because once something realizes it can affect your emotional or mental state, even slightly, it continues. It tests further, and pushes a little more. Not enough to alarm you, but enough to slowly shift your balance. Over time, what once felt unnatural begins to feel normal. And that is where the real danger lies. Because when something feels normal, you stop resisting it. And when resistance fades, access increases. What is near your home is operating within this exact pattern. That right because it did not mean to. It has relied on subtlety, on your distraction, on your willingness to dismiss what your spirit has been trying to show you. It has remained quiet so that it could remain undetected. But now, That silence has been broken. You are no longer unaware. You are no longer completely disconnected from what is happening around you. Something inside you has begun to recognize the shift. That feeling you could not explain before, it now has meaning. That unease you tried to ignore, it now has context. And awareness changes everything. Because the moment you recognize a pattern, the moment you see something for what it truly is, it begins to lose the power it held in secrecy. What once operated in the dark now faces resistance simply because it have been exposed. But understand this. Exposure does not mean it disappears immediately. What has invested time in observing and attempting to influence does not leave easily. It resists. It lingers. It tries to maintain its position for as long as possible. That is why your response in this moment is so critical. You cannot return to ignoring what you now understand. You cannot fall back into doubt or convince yourself that this is all coincidence. Because that is exactly what would allow this presence to regain its strength. You must remain aware. You must remain intentional. And you must remain firm. Because what is happening right now is a turning point. You are moving from being unconsciously affected to becoming consciously aware. And that shift places you in a position of authority you did not have before. Archangel Michael is not distant from this moment. He is present, positioned, and ready, but aligned with your awareness. His protection does not replace your action, it strengthens it. His presence does not override your authority, it responds to it. And right now, you are being called to stand in that authority. To recognize what has been happening, to refuse to allow it to continue, to break the pattern before it becomes something stronger, because what has been watching you is now being seen. And once something is truly seen, once it is fully recognized, it begins to lose its hold, but only if you continue to stand in awareness and do not return to silence. This is the moment where everything begins to shift. But what happens next will depend entirely on whether you hold that awareness or let it fade away again. Something has shifted and you felt it before you even understood it. This is not the beginning anymore. This is the moment everything started to change. Not around you, but within your awareness. Because there was a point, very recently, where something felt different and you could not explain why. A moment where your environment didn't feel as safe as it used to. A moment where silence felt louder than noise. A moment where your spirit reacted before your mind could catch up. That moment was not random. That was the first sign that the situation had already begun to move forward. You may remember it now, the exact feeling. Perhaps it was late at night, or early in the morning. Perhaps it happened when you were alone, when everything should have been calm. But instead of peace, there was tension. Instead of stillness, there was awareness. A quiet alertness that made you look around, even though nothing visible had changed. That was the shift. And from that moment, things have not felt exactly the same. This is what happens when something moves from distant observation into closer presence. It creates a disturbance in the atmosphere. Not loud, not obvious, but enough for your spirit to detect it. Because your spirit is designed to sense what your eyes cannot see. It reacts to energy before your mind can explain it. But here is where many people make a mistake. They ignore that first feeling. They push it away. They distract themselves. They convince themselves that it was nothing. And by doing that, they silence the very warning system that was trying to protect them. You always did the same. But something inside you didn't fully let it go. Something stayed unsettled. Something kept reminding you that what you felt was real, even if you could not explain it. That is why you are here now. That is why this message found you. because that moment was not just a feeling, it was confirmation. It was the point where everything changed. Since then, you may have noticed subtle differences. Your sleep may not feel as deep as it once did. Your thoughts may feel slightly more scattered. Certain areas of your home may feel heavier than others. Even your reactions to small things may have shifted. These are not isolated experiences. They are connected. They are the result of something pressing closer than before. And the closer it gets, the more noticeable the effects become. This is why Archangel Michael did not wait. This is why the warning came with urgency. Because once that shift happens, once presence moves closer, there is a limited window to respond before it becomes more difficult to push back. But you are still within that window. That is what you must hold on to. You are not too late. You are not powerless. But you are no longer in a position to ignore what is happening. There is also something else you must recognize. That shift you felt, it was not only a sign of something approaching, it was also a sign of your awareness awakening. Because not everyone would have noticed it. Not everyone would have felt it. What you did. And that means your spirit is not asleep. It means you are sensitive to what others overlook. And that sensitivity is not a weakness. It is a form of protection. But only if you trust it. Right now, you are standing in a moment where everything depends on whether you trust what you felt or whether you return to doubting it. Because doubt will try to return. It will try to tell you that you are overthinking, that nothing is wrong, that everything is normal. But everything is not normal. Something has already shifted, and pretending otherwise will not undo it. You must remain grounded in what you now understand. You must stay connected to that awareness that first woke you up. Because that awareness is what allows you to respond, to act, to protect what is yours before anything goes further. Archangel Michael is not stepping back. His presence is even closer now, because the moment of change has already happened. But his protection aligns with your recognition. He stands with you when you stand in truth, not when you return to denial. So do not ignore what you felt. Do not dismiss what your spirit has already confirmed. Because that moment, that single moment where everything felt different, was a beginning of this entire unfolding. And now that you see it clearly, now that you understand what that feeling meant, you cannot go back to being unaware. This is the point where everything either strengthens or slips further. And what happens next will depend on whether you choose to trust the shift you felt or silence it again. There is a shift happening right now that you cannot afford to overlook, because this is no longer just about warning. It is about activation. Everything you have felt, everything you have sensed, everything that have been revealed to you up to this moment have been leading here. This is where protection is no longer distant. This is where it becomes present, structured, and fully available to you. Archangel Michael is not standing far away, observing from a distance. He is stepping forward, closer than you realize, because the moment you became aware, the moment you acknowledged that something was not right, you created an opening, not for fear, but for divine protection to enter with authority. You must understand this deeply. Protection is already being extended toward you. It is not something you are trying to chase. It is something that is reaching toward you, waiting for your alignment so it can fully surround you. But alignment requires participation. It requires intention. It requires you to stand in agreement with what is being offered. Right now, Archangel Michael is offering you his shield. This is not symbolic language. This is a real, spiritual covering that surrounds your home, your energy, your thoughts, and your environment. It is a boundary that separates what belongs in your life from what does not. It is a force that does not negotiate with what tries to remain hidden. It establishes order where there was disturbance. But listen carefully. This shield does not activate fully through passive listening. It responds to your decision. You must make a conscious choice to step into it. Picture your home for a moment, not just as a structure, but as a space that extends beyond the walls. See the perimeter, the unseen boundary that surrounds everything you call yours. Now imagine that boundary being reinforced, strengthened, sealed. Not weak, not uncertain, but firm and unbreakable. And standing at every point of that boundary is Archangel Michael, alert, unwavering, and fully present. His stance is not defensive, it is authoritative. Nothing crosses without permission. Nothing lingers without alignment. Nothing remains if it does not belong. But you must speak into that reality, not with fear, not with doubt, but with clarity and authority. Because this is your space, and you have the right to declare what is allowed within it. When you speak, you are not just forming words, you are aligning your environment with intention. You are setting a boundary that was previously undefined. Say it within your spirit, even now, that your home is protected, that your space is sealed, that no presence without divine permission has the right to remain. Feel the weight of those words, because something will respond. You may sense a shift almost immediately, a lightness in the air, a release of tension that you did not even realize was building. Where you may feel resistance, a subtle push, a lingering heaviness trying to hold its place. Do not be unsettled by that. It is simply the reaction of something being confronted for the first time. Because until now, it was unchallenged. Now, it is being aggressed. This is how the shield begins to work. It does not chase after what is wrong. It establishes what is right so strongly that what is wrong cannot remain. It does not argue. It enforces. It does not hesitate. It stands with certainty. But your consistency matters. This is not a single moment of awareness that you can return from. This is a shift in how you exist within your own space. You are no longer unaware. You are no longer passive. You are now active in maintaining what surrounds you. And that changes everything. Because what once found comfort in your silence will now find resistance in your awareness. What once remained unnoticed will now be exposed by your attention. And what once lingered without challenge will now face a boundary it cannot easily cross. Archangel Michael's presence strengthens as you remain aligned. He does not replace your authority, he reinforces it. He stands with you as you take back control, as you reclaim every part of your space that was left unguarded before. But you must not return to doubt. Doubt weakens the boundary. Silence creates openings. Hesitation delays protection. You must remain steady. Because right now, you are no longer the same as you were when this message first reached you. You are aware. You are alert. You are engaged in what is happening around you. And that means the situation has already begun to change. Because what was watching you before is now facing resistance it did not expect. It is encountering awareness where there was once silence. It is meeting authority where there was once uncertainty. And that alone begins to shift the outcome. But this is not where the process ends. Because once protection begins to rise, there is a reaction that follows. And what happens in that reaction is what you must be prepared to understand next. And now listen carefully, because this is the moment where everything becomes real in a way you cannot ignore. Up until now, you have been warned, awakened, and aligned, but this is where the consequences of silence must be understood clearly. Not to frighten you without purpose, but to show you what truly happens when awareness is rejected and action is delayed. Because there are those who hear messages like this and do nothing. They feel the shift. They recognize the signs. They even sense that something is not right. But instead of responding, they hesitate. They wait. They tell themselves they will deal with it later, when they feel more certain, when they feel more ready, when they feel less uncomfortable. And in that waiting, something begins to grow. Silence is not neutral. Silence is permission. When you ignore what your spirit is showing you, when you choose not to act on what has already been revealed, you create space for that presence to remain. And the longer it remains, the more it settles. The more it settles, the stronger its influence becomes. What was once distant begins to feel closer. What was once subtle begins to feel heavier. What was once questionable begins to feel undeniable. But by then, it is harder to remove. This is the consequence of silence. It does not arrive suddenly. It builds quietly. You may begin to notice deeper disturbances. Your peace becomes harder to hold on to. Your thoughts feel more clouded. Your energy feels more drained, even without physical cause. Small disruptions become consistent patterns. And what you once dismissed as coincidence begins to feel like something you cannot escape. That is what happens when action is delayed. Because what is near your home does not stop on its own. It does not withdraw simply because you hope it will. It responds to your awareness, or your lack of it. If you remain aware, if you stand in authority, if you continue to declare and protect your space, it loses its ground. But if you fall back into silence, if you begin to doubt, if you allow hesitation to take over, it regains its position. And that is the moment things begin to escalate. This is why Archangel Michael's warning came with such intensity. Not because everything is already lost, but because there is still time to prevent that escalation. There is still a window where what has begun can be stopped before it becomes something more difficult to confront. But that window does not remain open forever. That is the truth many do not want to hear. Time matters in moments like this. Awareness without action fades. And when awareness fades, the opportunity to shift the outcome begins to close. You are not in that place right now. You are still aware. You are still being guided. You are still being given the chance to stand and change what happens next. But you must not ignore this moment. You must not return to comfort or distraction or doubt. Because what you do now determines whether this situation ends or continues. Archangel Michael is still standing with you. His presence has not moved away. His protection has not been withdrawn. But his role is to respond to your alignment, not replace it. He strengthens your stand. He does not stand in place of you. So you must remain firm. You must continue to declare your space. You must continue to hold awareness without letting it slip away. Because the difference between protection and consequence is not chance, it is response. And your response is happening right now. Type "I do not ignore" in the comments if you are choosing to stand in awareness and refuse to remain silent. Blessing code 8842 is now being released over your situation. And as this truth settles into your spirit, understand this: your response in this moment is not just about you. It is about every soul that is still unaware, every person who has not yet recognized what is happening around them. When you stand, when you respond, when you choose awareness over silence, you become a light that reaches beyond your own space. As it is written, those who sow in tears shall reap in joy. This is not just a verse. It is a living promise being spoken over you. The act of standing, of responding, of giving your energy and support to what is being revealed here is a seed. And that seed carries power. If your spirit is stirring right now, If you feel that pull to do more, to stand stronger, then act on it. There are PayPal links in the description and a QR code on your screen where you can release your offering. This is not just support. It is participation in a message that is reaching those who are still in darkness. I declare over you now, as you give, protection increases, clarity expands, and every hidden thing working against you begins to lose its place. Do not hesitate. Step forward, sow your seed, and align yourself fully with what heaven is releasing in this very moment. Now that you have come this far, there is something you can no longer ignore, something that has been quietly happening around you, waiting for you to recognize it fully. Because the truth is, the signs have already been there. They did not begin with this message, they began before it. This message simply opened your eyes to what your spirit has been trying to show you all along. Look closely at what has been happening in your life, especially within your home. There have been moments that felt unusual, moments that did not sit right within you. Not strong enough to alarm you immediately, but persistent enough to stay in your memory. These are not coincidences. These are confirmations. Have you noticed how certain sounds seem to come from nowhere, especially when everything else is quiet? A faint movement, a shift, something that makes you pause and listen more carefully. Or perhaps you have felt a sudden chill in a specific area of your home, even when the temperature has not changed. These are not random physical reactions. They are signals. And then there are the dreams. Dreams that feel more intense than usual, more vivid, more emotional, sometimes confusing, sometimes unsettling, sometimes so real that they stay with you long after you wake up. These dreams are not always just imagination. They can be reflections of what your spirit is processing, what it is detecting beyond your conscious awareness. You may have also felt a strange pull to certain spaces in your home, where the opposite, a desire to avoid them. That hesitation, that quiet resistance when entering a room, that feeling of discomfort without a clear reason, these are all part of the same pattern. These are the sacred signs. Not sacred because they are pleasant, but sacred because they are revealing truth. Because your spirit does not communicate randomly. It responds to what is real, even when your physical senses cannot confirm it. And right now, your spirit has been responding to something that has been present long enough to leave an impression. But here is what makes this moment different from all the others. Before, you noticed these signs but did not fully understand them. You questioned them, then dismissed them. You felt them, then moved on. But now, you are seeing them clearly. And now, you are connecting them. Now, they are no longer isolated moments. They are part of a larger picture. And that picture is becoming undeniable. This is how confirmation works. It does not arrive all at once. It builds. It repeats. It shows itself in different ways until you can no longer ignore it. And once you reach that point, once the pattern becomes clear, you are no longer left in uncertainty. You are placed in awareness. And awareness demands a response. Because now, you cannot say you did not know. You cannot say you did not feel it. You cannot say there were no signs. Everything has been leading to this realization. Even the timing of this message. Even the moment you chose to listen instead of scroll away. All of it aligns. And that alignment is not accidental. It is intentional. You are being shown what others are still blind to. You are being guided to recognize what others continue to ignore. And that means you are no longer in the same position as before. But there is something you must be careful about now. Once you begin to recognize signs, once your awareness becomes sharper, there is a temptation to fall into fear or overreaction. You may begin to question everything, to feel overwhelmed by what you are noticing. But that is not where you are meant to stay. You are not being shown these signs to weaken you. You are being shown them to prepare you, to strengthen your awareness, to sharpen your response, to make you more grounded, not more afraid. Because when awareness is balanced with authority, it becomes power, and that is what you are stepping into now. Archangel Michael is not revealing these signs to alarm you. He is revealing them so you can confirm that what you felt was real, that what you sensed was not imagined, that what you experienced had meaning. And now that meaning is clear, the sounds, the feelings, the dreams, the atmosphere shifts. They are all connected. They are all part of the same unfolding. And now, they are all pointing you toward one truth. You are no longer unaware, and you are no longer alone in what you are facing. Because now you see. Now, you understand. Now, you recognize what has been trying to remain hidden. And that changes your position completely. But what comes next will require even more clarity, because once the signs are fully recognized, the battle itself becomes impossible to ignore. What you are about to understand now is something most people never fully realize, even when they feel it. Because until this point, everything has been building toward one truth that cannot be softened or ignored any longer. What is happening around you is not passive. It is not neutral. It is part of a conflict, a spiritual tension that has now reached your doorstep. This is the moment where the unseen battle becomes real. Not in a way your eyes can capture, not in a way that can be easily explained to others, but in a way your spirit already recognizes. Because what you have been sensing, what you have been noticing, what you have been slowly awakening to is the result of opposing forces occupying the same space of awareness. On one side, there is protection, Odu, light, authority. This is where Archangel Michael stands, firm, unwavering, and fully aware of what is happening around you. His presence is not symbolic in this moment. It is active. It is positioned. It is engaged. On the other side, there is resistance, observation, influence attempting to take root quietly, without confrontation. It does not rush forward with noise or chaos. It moves carefully, relying on subtlety, relying on your lack of awareness, relying on hesitation. And right now you are standing in between. This is what makes this moment so critical. Because you are no longer outside of what is happening. You are not just observing it from a distance. You are within the space where this tension exists. And that means your awareness, your response, your actions, everything you do now, has weight. This is not a battle where you are helpless. But it is also not a situation where you can remain passive. Because passivity creates imbalance. If you do nothing, if you step back into silence, if you allow doubt to take over, then the side that relies on your inaction begins to gain ground. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but gradually, quietly, steadily. But if you stand, if you remain aware, if you continue to declare and protect your space, then alignment shifts in the opposite direction. Protection strengthens. Presence becomes established. And what does not belong begins to lose its ability to remain. This is how the balance moves. Not by chance, but by response. Archangel Michael's role in this moment is not just to defend, it is to engage. His presence brings order into a space where imbalance has begun to form. But his engagement aligns with your willingness to stand within that order. You are not separate from this process. You are part of it. This is why your awareness has been increasing. This is why the signs became clearer. This is why the warning came when it did. Because you are being positioned, not as a victim, but as someone who has the ability to respond and shift what is happening. But you must remain grounded in the truth. Because the moment you begin to doubt, the moment you question whether this is real, the moment you consider stepping back into comfort or distraction, that is when the balance begins to shift again. And that is exactly what the opposing force is waiting for. Not confrontation, not resistance, but hesitation. Because hesitation creates openings, and openings allow movement. But now, you are aware of that pattern. Now, you recognize how it works, and that recognition removes its advantage. This is where strength begins to rise within you. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady. A quiet certainty that you are no longer unaware. A grounded understanding that you are not alone. A clear realization that what is happening is real, but so is the protection that stands with you. Archangel Michael is not stepping back. He is standing in position, fully aware of both sides of this moment. And his presence does not weaken. It strengthens as you remain aligned. So you must hold your ground. You must continue to speak. You must continue to recognize what is happening without allowing fear to take control. Because this is not about fear. This is about awareness, authority, and alignment. And when those three come together, the outcome begins to change. What once felt uncertain becomes clear. What once felt heavy begins to lift. What once remained hidden begins to lose its place. But this is not the end of the confrontation. Because there is one final moment approaching, a point where everything you have understood, everything you have felt, everything you have been guided through will require a decision that cannot be delayed. And that decision will determine how this entire situation resolves. Now this is the moment everything has been leading toward. The final warning before the point where delay is no longer an option. You have been guided step by step, shown the signs, wakened to what is happening, and aligned with protection. But now, the time for understanding alone has passed. This is the moment where decision becomes everything. Feel the urgency in this moment, not as fear, but as clarity. Because there is a narrowing window right now. A closing space between what can still be changed and what will be allowed to continue if nothing is done. This is not about days or weeks. This is about a spiritual threshold that has already begun to tighten around your situation. You have felt it. That sense that time is moving differently. That something is pressing closer. That this is not something you can keep putting aside. That feeling is real. That is your spirit recognizing that the moment of action is no longer ahead of you. It is here. Right now. This is where many people turn away. Not because they do not understand, but because they feel the weight of responsibility. Because standing in awareness requires commitment. It requires consistency. It requires stepping out of comfort and into authority. And not everyone is willing to do that. But you are still here. You have not turned away. You have not ignored what you felt. And that is why this message continues to reach you. Because you are being given one final opportunity to fully step into alignment before the situation moves any further. This is what Archangel Michael is making clear. His voice is not soft in this moment. He is firm, direct, unmistakable. Because he is not just guiding you anymore. He is calling you to act without hesitation. You must make a decision now. Not later. Not when you feel more certain. Not when it feels more comfortable. Now, you must choose whether you will fully stand in what you have been shown or whether you will allow doubt to pull you back into silence. because there is no middle ground anymore. You cannot be aware and passive at the same time. You cannot recognize the signs and still ignore them. You cannot feel the shift and pretend it has not happened. This is the line, and once you cross it, everything changes. If you choose to stand, to remain aware, to actively protect your space, to continue declaring and aligning with the protection that has been offered, then what has been forming around you will begin to break. It will not be able to hold its position. It will not be able to continue its influence. It will be forced to withdraw. But if you hesitate, if you allow yourself to step back, if you convince yourself that this can wait, then you give time for it to stabilize further. And time is what it needs. This is why this moment is so critical. Because your decision determines the direction. Not chance. Not coincidence. Not anything outside of you. Your response. You may feel the intensity of this right now. That pressure, that urgency, that sense that this is something you cannot ignore. That is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to awaken your full attention. Because you are capable of standing in this moment. You are capable of choosing awareness over silence. You are capable of stepping fully into the authority that has been offered to you. Archangel Michael is not leaving your side in this moment. His presence is stronger now than it has been at any point before. But his strength aligns with your decision. He stands with those who stand. He moves with those who act. He protects those who choose to remain aware. So this is your moment. The final call before everything settles into the direction you choose. Do not let hesitation take it from you. Do not let doubt silence what your spirit has already confirmed. Stand fully. Speak clearly. Remain aware. Because what you do right now will determine whether this ends in protection or continues into something more difficult to reverse. And once this moment passes, it does not return the same way again. Beloved soul, everything has led you to this moment, and now, for the first time since this message began, you can breathe. Because what felt intense, what felt overwhelming, what felt uncertain has now been brought into the light. And when something is brought into the light, it no longer holds the same power it once had in the dark. You are not where you were before. You are not unaware anymore. You are not unprotected anymore. You have seen. You have understood. And most importantly, you have responded. And that changes everything. Right now, the atmosphere around you is not the same as it was when this message first reached you. Something has shifted. Something has been corrected. Because the moment you chose awareness, the moment you chose to stand instead of ignore, the entire direction of this situation began to turn. What was watching had been confronted. What was lingering has been challenged. What was hidden has been exposed. And where there is exposure, there is no longer comfort for anything that does not belong. This is the power of what you have done. Not through fear, not through panic, but through awareness, alignment, and authority. Archangel Michael's presence is no longer just a warning voice in the distance. It is now a covering around you. A steady, watchful protection that stands at the boundaries of your space, ensuring that what tried to approach before cannot return in the same way again. Feel that for a moment. Feel the difference in your spirit. There is a calm now that was not there before. A quiet strength, replacing the uncertainty. A grounded sense that you are not alone, that you are not exposed, that you are not vulnerable in the way you once were. That is not imagination. That is alignment. Because when you stand in awareness, when you speak with intention, when you refuse to allow silence to take over again, your environment responds. Your space becomes stronger. Your presence becomes clearer. And what does not belong begins to lose its place completely. But listen carefully. This is not the end of your awareness. This is the beginning of your consistency. You must carry this forward, not with fear, but with confidence, not with tension, but with peace. Because now you know what it feels like to be aware. You know what it feels like to recognize when something is not right. And you know what it feels like to stand and shift it. That is something no one can take from you. From this moment on, your home is not just a place you live in. It is a space you are aware of, a space you protect, a space you actively align with peace and presence. And as long as you remain in that awareness, as long as you continue to stand in that authority, nothing that does not belong will be able to remain comfortably around you. Archangel Michael stands with you, not just for this moment, but for every moment you remain aligned. And now, you can rest, not in ignorance, but in protection, not in fear, but in peace. Because what needed to be revealed has been revealed. What needed to be confronted has been confronted. And what needed to be protected has now been secured. Type "I am covered" in the comments if you receive this peace and choose to remain in awareness. Blessing code 9907 is now sealing your protection. And as this peace settles into your spirit, hear this clearly. This message was never just for you alone. You were chosen to hear it because you are also part of a greater flow, a movement of light reaching others who are still unaware, still searching, still in need of awakening. As it is written, "Give, and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." This is not just a verse. It is God speaking directly into your moment right now. And if you feel that stirring in your heart, that quiet voice saying, "I want to be part of this," then do not ignore it. Say within yourself, "I am ready to sow into what heaven is doing." Because every seed you release becomes light in someone else's darkness. There are PayPal links waiting in the description and a QR code placed for you. This is your moment to act, not later, not someday, but now. As you give, I declare over your life, your home will remain covered, your peace will multiply, your path will be guarded, and what once tried to come near will never find access again. This is not a donation. It is a divine response. Zap forward, release your seed, and become a living part of what God is spreading through this message right now.